Thanks for joining me again. Let's now look at how this moderate revolution, this revolution with its dreams of the philosophes, the dreams of liberty and equality and community, brotherhood, fraternity, how this became radical and violent and turned into the complete bloodlust that seemed to be the reign of terror. There's going to be a theme throughout this next few minutes, and that is the theme of war. Secondary to that is the theme, if you like, a sub-theme of fear. After the royal family tried to get out of France in June 1791, the revolutionary government became very suspicious and hostile towards anyone who they thought may be an internal enemy. If you had sympathy for the royal family, if you were an aristocrat or like the aristocrats, if you were religious, a strong Catholic, if you were in any way soft on revolutionary objectives, you possibly were an internal enemy. This was at the same time that the revolutionary government of France felt it was surrounded by a number of hostile countries who wanted to support the emigres, those aristocrats who had escaped France. So if you were a revolutionary leader in France in 1791, you felt there were enemies inside your country working to bring down the revolution, and there were enemies outside France, both French outside France and other countries who wished to destroy the revolution and turn back the clock. The three European monarchies outside France, Britain, Prussia, one of the big German states because Germany wasn't a country yet, and Austria, that even controlled Holland right on the borders of France, all were outraged by the revolution and wondered whether they should get involved, how they might get involved, why they should get involved, what their motives would be if they tried to overturn this revolution. Some of them felt they just wanted to support King Louis XVI and to prevent the spread of revolution. Austria was like that because of their connections to Marie Antoinette. Other countries wanted to take advantage of the chaos in France and capture territory off the French while their French kingdoms and the rival of the French kingdom was weakened. Some of the German states on the border were like that. So France, expecting an attack, particularly from Prussia, one of the largest German states, and Austria, got in first and preemptively decided to unify the country and attack the Prussians and the Austrians before they were attacked themselves. The National Convention, the government of France, felt that it would unify the country if they turned against its enemies overseas. In this time of national emergency, when a war was breaking out, the moderate revolutionaries who wanted a constitutional monarchy and wanted essentially the ideas of just the August Decrees and just the Declaration of the Rights of Man, found it very hard to hold on to their power in the convention, in the government. Those who promised to do whatever it took to fight for France, to do whatever it took to keep the revolution safe, the more radical, the more extremist of the revolutionary groups took power. This map you're going to refer to a bit in the next few minutes. Take a moment to get a sense of what France looked like, what areas the convention controlled in green, the orange areas that the convention had little control over, the greyish areas where the king still had a lot of support, often these were very Catholic areas, and areas where it was almost lawless, where there were uprisings and the government wasn't really strong and no one was really in control. And then outside of France, we have big rival nations, England and Spain, but also this is the area of the German states here that I'm marking now, and to the north, in the area around here, is Holland, controlled by Austria. Now, it's not surprising with enemies all around in these conditions inside France that the revolutionaries thought they might suspend some of those freedoms they promised in 1789 to take the attitude that the nation's not really safe yet. we might have to wait before people could express their views. 1792 was a really dangerous time. The émigrés seemed to be wanting to create a counter-revolution, a revolution of the aristocrats to overthrow the convention. The convention was now fighting a war against Prussia and Austria. It seemed that the foreign countries, aristocrats and clergy all together wanted to put the Ancien regime back in power, put Louis back on the throne as an absolute monarch. And civil war was breaking out in areas where Catholics wanted to put the clergy back into a powerful place in French society. Riots, lawlessness, disorder are taking place in some of the regions. No one's in charge. And it's this environment where the convention felt it should do something. And it felt it was time to crush any opposition within the country, even if that meant going against the freedoms in the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. Even if it meant they had to take drastic measures to overthrow or overlook the values of the revolution in order to save the revolution. This was really brought to a head in late July 1792, when the Duke of Brunswick, a friend of Queen Marie Antoinette, threatened the people of Paris. He said if Louis or the royal family were harmed in any way, his soldiers were going to come in and they're going to burn Paris to the ground. Obviously, the people of Paris, including the sans-culottes, are outraged at this, and the moderate voices, those saying that the revolutionary government should be calm and settled, were silenced. There was a sense that this war had to be won and the revolution had to succeed. And look at the kind of artwork and etchings that appeared in France. Here we've got the manifesto, the written threat of the Duke of Brunswick being used as toilet paper by the sans-culottes of Paris. War and fear at this time, a fear that their city would be burnt to the ground, the war against enemies, led to the rise of the most violent and radical revolutionaries. Not long after the Duke of Brunswick made his threat, the royals are arrested. They're taken from the Tuileries in Paris, their palace in Paris, and they're thrown into the Temple, one of the most feared places of revolutionary France. And the Temple was a dungeon. This arrest is seen by some to be the first event of the Reign of Terror that generally we say starts in 1793. At this time, huge revolutionary armies full of the working class, including the sans-culottes of Paris, the sans-culottes of cities like Marseille, are raised. Freedoms are suspended. Power gets put into the hands of the most radical, most patriotic revolutionary leaders who form small committees to run the country until the revolution is safe. A political party, a club of politicians, often they were bourgeoisie, take power at this time, called the Jacobins, and they stay in power until 1794, particularly under the leadership of this guy, Maximilien Robespierre, who leads the most powerful of the committees that the convention tried to set up. In fact, it's more important than the convention, the Committee of Public Safety. He's in power from 1793 to 1794 in the Reign of Terror until he himself is executed. And here's an image of him being executed on the guillotine himself after he sent 16,000 other people to their deaths. The crowd celebrating here in this other image as Robespierre's head is displayed to the crowd. The revolutionary soldiers are in the street. The country is still at war. But the revolution is now going to rely on its armies to protect it.